Hey everyone, I'm Crystal Jagrup, the founder of Book of Bijou, a line of chic and innovative jewelry storage. And in 2022, we expanded into our Empowered by Women platform to create a centralized space to really focus on our mission of women empowerment and community over competition. It really truly does fill my cup to be surrounded by all of you incredible women entrepreneurs. You guys fuel me with so much more motivation to continue doing what I'm doing. And your energy that you bring to me and our platform on a daily basis is truly unmatched. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here with me today. Before we jump into the episode, please make sure that you are subscribed and following us on whichever platform you're tuning in with us today, and sharing your favorite episodes with your fellow business babes or female founders so we can continue growing our platform and furthering our mission. All right, let's jump into the next episode with another incredible woman in business that I know you guys are going to absolutely love. Today, we're speaking with the incredible Elizabeth Brunner. She is the mother of two beautiful children and also the founder of StereoType Kids, a clothing line for children with an emphasis on blended fashion, which is something that we're going to dive into today. But even more than that, the brand really just encourages individuality for all people across the board, not just children. So, Elizabeth, I'm really excited to dive into your story today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Crystal. I'm excited to join as well.
All right, so let's just dive into it. Tell us about your background. I think I already knew that you kind of had a fashion background before, but what was your path that led you to creating StereoType?
Wow. Okay, so I do have a fashion background. I studied fashion and graduated in 2007. And I started a business actually right away, unintentionally. Started a business called Piece by Piece, which is basically was a business about reusing fabric waste from local designers. I launched that in 2008, and I'm sorry, 2010. And then I worked on that for a good, 10 years. And then when I had my twins in 2013, things really shifted and changed for me. Becoming a mom is obviously a big deal, and it really shifted my perspective on how I could spend my time. But the path to StereoType is really interesting. I actually, it was more of an observation of my twins, and I have a boy and a girl. And when they were around 4, they started sharing clothing. And it was just really great to watch them just go into each other's drawers, pick out clothes they wanted to wear. And it was all based on what just they were attracted to. And so that planted the seed for me starting StereoType, although I didn't know it at the time. It really became a calling that was built up over time watching them share their clothing. And that's where the term blended fashion also came from, is from watching them blend their wardrobes together. My daughter would wear my son's camo pants and, a dinosaur t-shirt. And then my son would wear, my daughter's sparkle shirts and would also wear like her pink tights. So it really became the idea for blended fashion started there.
Yeah, so what were their wardrobes like in the beginning before they had any interest or their personalities really started developing? Were they very traditional? You bought your daughter all of the traditionally girl things and your son the traditionally boy things?
I didn't actually. I felt like I really tried not to do that. I tried to keep their wardrobe pretty neutral. I mean, I would buy things more traditional for my son and more traditional for my daughter, but nothing over the top. I was never into, items that were really sparkly or really like tutu or, for my son, really, I guess, more boyish. So no, I kept their clothing pretty neutral, but of course we would get gifts, and those gifts would be pretty gender specific. So I would get a lot of pink for my daughter, purple. I mean, I remember somebody saying, I never see Chloe in pink ever. And that was not necessarily intentional, but it wasn't a focus of mine. I would just buy clothes I thought that would look good on them, that would be comfortable, mainly because they're babies moving around. And that was more of my mindset at that time.
Where did you shop? Did you have a hard time finding a lot of neutral clothing? Because of course, once you go into the stores, there are those very traditional categories, lots of pinks and purples, and then lots of blues and dark colors for the boys. So did you have a hard time finding those to begin with?
Well, it wasn't my specific focus to just buy neutral. I just wouldn't focus on gendered clothing. So I would occasionally buy my daughter dresses. Of course, she looked great in dresses and I loved seeing her in them. And then I would buy my son, traditional, like, truck kind of things, but it wasn't my focus. I think for me, it was more about comfort, but I would shop anywhere and I would take hand-me-downs from friends who had kids that were older. So it was never just, it has to be this way. I think I was always open-minded about the way they wanted to dress. I just had no idea that it would lead to starting a company.
Well, I love that so much. Just kind of, that open-mindedness and just allowing things to kind of unfold as they're meant to unfold. I am curious what your personal style is.
My personal style, oh gosh. Well, I would like to say that I am stylish, but I'm actually pretty basic when it comes to dressing just because I'm moving around a lot. So I wear a lot of t-shirts and jeans and things, but I do like to kick it up a notch occasionally when I have time and I'm, going somewhere. I do like to dress more, out of the ordinary, I guess I would say, out of the norm of what I would normally dress. So yeah, I like to stick to jeans and t-shirts when I'm home and I'm working from my home studio. But when I'm going into the city, I add more style and flair for sure. And it's
I
fun.
asked
And my
because,
kids have
yeah.
really taught me how to do that, actually.
And I think that's how fashion should be, right? You should just be able to switch it up at any given day and just wear what you feel like wearing, whether you're dressed up or just very, very comfortable in a t-shirt and sweats, like you have that flexibility. I bring up your personal style because I have two girls myself, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they're very much like very girly. And I am too. If you probably ask around, my fashion sense is pretty girly. So of course I don't like push it on them, but I'm sure they pay attention to what I wear and they try to be like mom.
Absolutely. And my kids do as well. I mean, they'll go into my closet and they'll ask to try things on. My son this morning was like, "Can I try your kimono on this morning?" And so they do have their own sense of style, and their sense of style really inspired me to go beyond my normal as well. And I think that's what's great about kids, is that they can really show you a new way of thinking. And that's what my kids have done for me.
I love that. And your son must have great style if he's asking to borrow a kimono. I love a
He
good
really
kimono.
does. He really does. He needs his own, fashion page for sure.
So let's switch over to the business side of things. Obviously, this isn't your first rodeo. You've had Piece by Piece for 10 years, you said. So tell us about kind of that transition and what was so different about this new business that you were venturing in, and what new obstacles you had to face with starting StereoType.
Yeah. So, I had no intention of starting a new business. I closed Piece by Piece in 2018. And it was just more of like a personal decision for me. I enjoyed doing the work, I enjoyed doing the business, but it was highly niche and it was difficult to maintain. And so once I closed it, I thought that's it. Okay, great. I'm, not going to be in a fashion business anymore. But then when I had the idea for StereoType, it was just really difficult to ignore. And it became something that was just like, a purpose for me. And so watching my kids dress themselves, watching them want to go beyond gender norms was just the driver for me. And I just was like, okay, well, I'll play with this idea. Let's just see what would I do? How, if I were to create this clothing line, how would it look? And so it really started there. And once I sort of gained momentum on, oh, I actually want to do this. Okay, what do I have to do? Am I ready to do this again? I just jumped right in. And it really was a decision, a moment I remember where I was just like, okay, it's either in or out. What is it? Is it going to be, this way or that? So for me, it was really a lot of personal reflection. And I knew it would take a lot. Of course, you never know how much it's going to take, but I knew that it was going to take, a lot of drive, a lot of hard work, a lot of ambition. And I honestly didn't know if I could do that. I mean, I really had to work up to that point. But once I decided to do it, I was like, I'm all in, I'm going to do it. So it became, it's a calling. Like I said, it's my purpose. I feel like it's my moral obligation to do this, and my kids are watching and I'm doing it for them. So there's even more of a reason to really step up and do it.
You clearly have so much heart behind it, and I like how you said that there was this calling that you can't ignore, but that's typically how it goes for entrepreneurs, right? They kind of just have this like nagging sense, like it keeps coming back to them, like I feel like I have to do this, I feel like I have to do this. So when you left your first business, what was your vision for yourself before the idea of StereoType and creating it into a business, what were your original plans?
I mean, it's kind of funny to think about it now. It was like, I'm definitely not doing what I thought I was going to be doing. So when I closed Piece by Piece and shut it down, we moved from San Francisco up north and to, a quieter life and really just to slow time down. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna, take time off from doing Piece by Piece. I'm going to continue to do something artistic because I have a creative calling. And then I'm going to see if I can write children's books. That was my plan. And then that lasted like, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And then when I had the idea for a StereoType, there was just no turning back. So my life is very different than what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a lot quieter. I wasn't going to be rushed. I wasn't going to be busy. I was just going to like take a stab at writing children's book for twins because there isn't that many children's book about twins out there. And that just was not the plan. So at least that wasn't the universal plan. So I just, have to go with the flow sometimes. And that's why I'm here.
Right. Life never goes as planned. And this is definitely not a quiet life for you, right? Having to do all these interviews. So I'm curious to see what kind of obstacles you faced. And I do have more specific questions that we'll kind of dive into, but in building your brands, what has been the hardest part?
Well,
Or
there's been
parts
a
if
lot
there's multiple.
there's been a lot of hard parts for sure. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I really didn't know if I could do it. I was like, okay, this is going to be for a lot of reasons a challenge, right? There wasn't just one challenge, there was a lot of challenges. And when I really started building the business idea out, it was during COVID. And it became the antidote for what was going on in the outside world. I really needed to shift my focus. Everything was very heavy, intense at that time. And so for me, it was like, okay, this is going to be my medicine. I'm going to work on this business. I'm going to laser focus on it. I'm going to build it as much as I can. But there were limits within that, right? Factories were closed. I work with local vendors. So there was a lot of obstacles there as well. But things ended up lining up in order for my first capsule to launch. So I think a lot of it has to do with faith and how much you really want to get something done. And that was a big obstacle for me. So the first obstacle was getting to a place where I could believe in myself to do the business, because it is, it's not for the faint of heart. It does take a lot of energy, a lot of work, a lot of focus, and you never know what you're getting into beforehand, right? It's like, it's a wild ride. So once I got to the point where I was, excited and was ready to jump in, then things started to align. And of course, there's challenges all the time. And the biggest challenges at that time were, getting goods made. And it's very important for me to support local manufacturers and to work with local vendors to have the goods made. And that obstacle, became something that I overcame just with time and patience, and then just seeing how things lined up. So those were the biggest obstacles in the beginning.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like when you say you kind of questioned whether or not you can do it, a lot of that did have to do with knowing how much were going to have to dedicate it to it, the effort, the time, and especially with two young children. So how old were they when you launched?
They were 6 when I launched.
Okay. So
Yeah.
still fairly young, but having to juggle that time with motherhood and building a business, it seems like that was kind of one of the biggest things that you really had to think about before you could decide whether or not to dive in. So how has it been for you trying to juggle motherhood and building this business?
I mean, it's not perfect, of course. I would say the biggest obstacles with that is that you really can't do it all. You want to have a balance as much as possible. And I think for me, it's been just one thing at a time, like really just focusing on one thing at a time. And my kids are great motivators. I mean, they understand that they inspired the business. They understand the reason behind it. They are excited about it. They can't wait to see it grow. And so that became part of my motivation to just keep going with the idea, the business, and, letting it expand the way it needs to expand.
I love that was first inspired by them, but then you've taken them along for the journey and you've made them co-founders. So I want to hear all about that. Like, what was the thought process behind that? And what are their actual duties as co-founders? What is it that they help you
They're
with?
running the whole show. No, I'm kidding. No, so they're co-founders. I made them co-founders last year. And the reason behind it really is pretty simple. I mean, they are literally the DNA of the brand. Without them, I wouldn't have the idea. And really, without their motivation, I wouldn't strive to do it. And so for me, it became really a way to show them how to achieve a dream and a goal. My kids are also homeschooled, so this is part of their education is, watching me learning in some ways of what I'm doing. They're excited to see interviews. They'll be excited to see this one. They know that it's taking, different efforts from me. They're not in the day to day. How they're involved is they're involved with the way the clothes are made. They test out the products. They're models for the website. They help with some of the content. So, they're 10. They're not going to be, analyzing data or anything like that, but they are a part of the business and it's meaningful for them. And I want to show them that they can achieve a goal. I can already tell that, they're very inspired by it. And, my daughter, Chloe, is like, she's going to be running this business. I can really see that. So it's exciting to see that part of them get excited about what a job or what a business could be for them, knowing it's mission based as well. I want to inspire them to do that.
That's incredible. And I did not know that you homeschooled, so I'm even more impressed with you because that sounds like a lot. I don't think I could ever homeschool my girls. That just that sounds kind of miserable to me. So I
Yes, well,
applaud
I
anyone.
have help, so I don't want anybody to think,
Okay.
I'm doing it all. I don't.
Mhm.
I have help and a wonderful caretaker who's helping me with that.
Yeah.
But it is part of the life that I wanted to create with them. And since I work mostly from home, we end up spending a lot of time together. And that also is something that is helpful when they're, watching me work and watching me create the business and build it up.
That's awesome. And it seems like there would be so much opportunity for kind of those two worlds to collide, the homeschooling, the fact that you're building this business and you can definitely take plenty of different experiences from your business and turn it into like real world situations or exercises that you can give to them. So they have a really great role model to look up to, and I can see big things for them, especially if they're in this, like really in this with you and learning from you with you as you grow. So that's incredible. I want to go into, the actual product and everything that you're doing. Obviously, you've already talked about blended fashion and, what makes this world unique is that there's so many different people and so many opposing point of views. So I am curious about any critics that you may have faced, because of course there's people that think that we should be raising our children a certain way or that people should be dressing certain ways, and of course that gets extended to our children. So how do you respond to them if you have had any of these critics? I'm not sure if you have, but if you haven't, we can make this a hypothetical question, like how would you respond to them?
Yeah, I know I've had critics for sure. I've had critics mostly social media. That's been my main experience. And, it's difficult. It's a very personal thing for me, right? Starting this business inspired by my kids. So, it can trigger, a real defensiveness, but I actually tried to look at it as a learning opportunity. It's not going to be for everyone, and that's fine. Nothing is, right? So for me, it's all about a subtle education, about shifting your perspective about your child, right? Some people will get offended. No, boys shouldn't wear skirts. They're only for girls. I mean, I do hear that quite a bit. But what I like to say is that you don't need to be afraid of your child expressing beyond a gender norm. We're the ones that are putting parameters around what they should be wearing. And if they're curious and want to explore a different way of dressing, remove the need to label it. Remove the need to label any of it, because when we label our children, we limit them. And so it really is about self-reflection, especially as a parent. For me, it's like, okay, if my son likes to wear dresses and skirt, what am I really seeing here? What is it that I'm looking at? It's not that he wants to be a girl. He just enjoys twirling around because he loves to see the fabric float up. So it was a real shift in how I was looking at my kids and the joy that I was seeing in them when they would wear something outside of their, gender. And my daughter too, and she wants to wear all black or wear camo and her baseball hat backwards. Like, she's being authentic to who she is. And I can see that light within her. And so, responding to critics is really just being as gentle as I can, but also it's okay. You don't have to agree with me. You're not meant to agree with everything from everyone. This is just a new way of being and thinking and challenging yourself.
I love that you're okay with the critics being there, the presence of them there, and you kind of accept and understand that that's always going to be there. I think that can kind of be a tough part for entrepreneurs to kind of have to face that, especially if it's their first time, building a brand new business and realizing that not everyone sees what they see. Why do you think we have that fear, or people have that fear of children being just genuinely curious as they are, and in expressing themselves in very creative ways, which could be in the form of dressing kind of different?
I think, it starts from when we're young. The seeds are planted pretty young. You can do this, but not that. And, I think that that's where self-reflection can really come in. It's also cultural, right? It could be cultural, it could be familial, it could be societal. So I think if you are able to say, where was the seed planted? Okay, if my daughter is wanting to wear camo and I want her to wear a dress and only dresses, or I want her to wear pink and only pink, ask yourself why. Where was that seed planted? And can you shift your mindset to looking at your child and how they are behaving, and what you're seeing when they're putting on something that makes them feel good, that they choose for themselves? Because kids just innately know what they love, right? I mean, they can certainly be inspired. Like you said, your girls are inspired by you, and you like to dress more feminine, and that's great. I'm not here to judge any of that. It's more about, and nobody should be judging that. It's more about, what is your child showing you? And if your child is showing you that they are happy and fulfilled in what they're wearing, don't be afraid of it. Don't feel like you have to control it. And I think, that's a tough shift for some people. But if you can ask yourself, where was the seed planted? Do I still agree with it? Why do I agree with it? And is this really relevant to my daughter or my son who wants to express something outside of a gender norm?
What I love is that you also have a blog too. So you're allowing people to kind of reach out to you that do have different, opposing views, or they're coming to you with like their fears of their children expressing them this way, and you are able to respond to them in a way that's very graceful and professional. And I love that. It's definitely, going back to you really putting your heart and soul into the mission of the brand and not just the product itself. So I admire that so much. So what about your children? Like, do they ever face criticism kind of directly, and how have you prepared them for that?
It is interesting to see the reaction difference between my daughter and my son. When my daughter expresses a more masculine look, wearing her baseball hat backwards or wearing head to toe black, she never gets any looks or comments. But when my son would dress more feminine and wear, things that are outside of a norm for him, being a boy, he definitely would get more side glances and whispers. And, it's difficult because you can't control what people are going to say or think about your children. So you have to prepare them. And the way I prepared them is really just, well, I didn't need to prepare my daughter. And that was a very interesting. It's okay to express in a masculine way, right? For her, not okay for my son to express the feminine. So what I would tell my son is, you can be whoever you want to be and dress however you want to dress. Other people may not see it that way. Those are rules for them, but you can dress the way you want to because of how we are in our home. So it's really creating a stability for him, knowing that I'm going to stand right next to him. If he wants to wear a dress to school, I'm going to be right there. If anyone has a comment about it, he will tell me, and I will, give him the tools to respond. But he's pretty aware, and he doesn't even mind if people misgender him and say he's a girl. He's just like, it's all right. I'm going to wear what I want to wear, and I like the way I look. And I think he just has that real strong belief. And my daughter does too. She's can be pretty defensive of Jacob if she needs to be, but they're both really solid in who they are and the way they want to express.
And that's incredible. And that's going to set them up just for such a great life in the future, that they're already at that point, with themselves and that comfortability with themselves now at such a young age. That's incredible.
Well, it
Was
starts at
there,
home. It definitely
yeah,
started at home, right? It's creating that safety net for them. Like, sure, the outside world may not see you the way that you would like them to, and that's okay. They don't know. I was removing a barrier for them in the way that they can express, and that's really what it really, what I try to teach people as well, is that this is an invisible box that we're putting our children in. So if we can remove that barrier and let them express themselves authentically, then we're really setting them up to know who they are a lot sooner rather than later.
absolutely. Was there ever a point prior to him feeling, very grounded in who he was, where the criticism did kind of make him hesitate when he was deciding what to wear?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting. It was really around other people he knew. So I remember buying him. I think it was like a Frozen, nightgown, like the movie Frozen, and it was this blue nightgown. It was great. And he was wearing it around at home, twirling it around. And then when we got some visitors from outside our home, he went and changed. And I said, "Well, why are you changing?" And he's like, "No, because." He was aware that there might be, some pushback on it. And I said, "Jacob, you're at home. You can wear whatever you want. If you want to run out there and wear your skirt and your dress, go do it. If you don't, that's okay too." So it gave him room to make a decision for himself. And ultimately, I'm like, I'm going to be there if somebody says something about it. So, go out there and wear it if you want to. And he actually ended up doing that. He ran out. I remember he did a twirl, he kind of ran around, and then he went back and he kind of, like stuck his head out of the corner. And there was a little bit of hesitation with it, I think, especially, people are raised more traditionally, like they're not used to seeing that. And they think something might be wrong. And it's like, no, he's just being himself. Jacob is just being Jacob. And same for my daughter, Chloe, they're just being who they are. And I think having that instinct and wanting to express himself that way was not something I felt I should take away or try to change.
I've had the opportunity to listen to another interview that you had on another podcast, but you've had some of the pushback from even family, right? And that's kind of when those conversations are harder, when it's people that you know and that people that you trust to have around your kids. So how do you have those conversations, and how much has it affected kind of your relationship with other people?
I haven't had any real strong pushback. I've certainly had, my parents even like, "Well, he's a boy, you shouldn't be wearing a dress." And for me, it was like, no, that's what he likes to wear. So I think, that's when the mama bear kicks in, and it's like, I don't care who is saying it. I'm going to, breathe fire if I need to, just to make my point. And I don't really mean that, like, I'm not going to get angry, but it really did stir me because, our kids should just be able to express themselves the way that they innately need to without putting a parameter on it. And so for me, it was just like, okay, I'm going to start with the trigger it triggers in me, take a breath, and present another way of thinking. And now my family is like, that's just Jacob. He's just being Jacob. And my daughter is just being my daughter. They're not looking at it as a marker for who he is or who he may be. And that's where I'm saying, a lot of the times, like, we label something right away for our children. We don't need to do that. As soon as we label, then we limit, and we limit ourselves too. And I think the growth is there for parents as well, right? I'm not just advocating for kids, I'm advocating for everyone about being an individual and exploring and moving beyond a parameter if it's something that you're curious about. So that's my goal.
I love that so much, that even though this is a product line for children, your mission is so much bigger than that. I mean, obviously, like you said, it starts at home, and we want to be able to offer our children that freedom and that flexibility, and just have that genuine curiosity that that we're all born with, but at some point, it kind of starts changing into all of this judgment and all of these rules that we have to follow and all of these standards that are set to us by society. I do love that you really are just encouraging that individuality for everyone. And, even people without children, they have something to take away from your mission. So tell us what the future looks like for Stereotype Kids.
Ooh, that's a juicy question. I think the future is wide open. I don't like to say specifically like this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm planning. I'm learning as well. I'm learning to go beyond my comfort zone as well. Doing interviews, talking to people was something I really had to get comfortable with. And so for me, even this business is really about my own growth and expansion. And I like to reflect that out as much as possible. And I'm going to continue to do that. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know exactly what will happen, but I'm taking each step with a lot of gratitude, knowing that I'm carrying a mission out that really feels personal and is exciting to see where it all goes. So who knows? We'll have to come back and have another interview and see how that pans out in a year or so.
Yeah, we definitely will because, as we both said already, plans are never gonna stay what your plans are, right?
Exactly.
But as long as you go into it with, faith and the heart that you're already putting into it, I'm sure more and more incredible things are gonna happen for you and your brand and your family, and more opportunities are gonna open up. And I'm really excited to see what this turns into for you and everyone else that it's affecting. So last question. What are your top tips for, other women entrepreneurs, especially mom entrepreneurs? Of course, I have a soft spot for mom entrepreneurs because I am one myself. So what are your tips for other women out there that are looking to start their own businesses?
Yeah, I like to give the tip of just get started. If you have an idea, then, just get started, even if it's just writing it out or sketching it out. Or, I remember when I had the idea for StereoType, I was like, okay, what do I do? Well, I just went to Michael's and picked up a few crafting tools and started working that way. I think just getting the start is really important. And also one thing at a time, because as moms, we think we can multitask everything, and we can. We are really good at multitasking, but we can't be perfect. And so really prioritizing your time and your mental health is really important as well, because we can't do everything. But if you can get started with your idea, keep it going one day at a time, one step at a time, and then just, don't give up. I think, if you have something that is calling you, and you can't get it out of your mind, that's for a reason. You need to see it come to fruition in some way, or at least get it started. So, one step at a time, get it started. And your voice is important, especially as a mom. Your voice is important and it needs to be heard. It doesn't matter how old you are, your background, your ethnicity, none of that matters. Your voice is important and it needs to be heard.
Yes, I love that so much. Your voice is important and it needs to be heard. So everyone listening, remember that. That is just so key. I feel like oftentimes we devalue our voice and our opinions and our insight, but there are people that are out there that need to hear it. Absolutely.
Yes.
So, where can all of our viewers, our listeners find you and your brand and your mission and all that you have to offer?
Yeah, so you can head over to stereotypekids.com and check out the website. You can sign up for our newsletter and get content sent right to your inbox. You can also check us out on Instagram at Stereotype Kids Official. And we are working on our TikTok account, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, those are the two main channels that you can reach us at. And, if you want to send a message or have a question, please send it our way. We always like to hear from people who do have questions about dressing beyond gender norms.
Love that. And of course, as always, all of those links will be down below in the show notes. So you can reach out to Elizabeth at any time. And definitely, if you have questions about kind of your own experiences that you're living through, reach out to her or just check out her product. I checked out the collection, love it. It's amazing. And there definitely just you can see the intention that's behind it, which is really incredible. Elizabeth, you've been amazing to chat with. I'm again so honored to have you here today. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Crystal. It was so much fun.
Another incredible interview in the books. I hope you all loved this episode just as much as I did. Before we close off, if you yourself are also a woman entrepreneur, please consider joining our women-owned small business directory on the Empowered by Women website. We are looking for product and service-based women-owned businesses based in the US to help us create the go-to place for communities to connect and support local women in business. All the details can be found at www.empoweredbywomen.com/apply-directory. That will be linked in the show notes below. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in with us today, and I'll see you on the next episode.